Welcome back to Studio Chatter. Bad things happen to people, and if you find yourself as a victim of the bad things, where can you go for help? Let's welcome Heather Frost, the Victim's Advocate with the Spanish Fork Police Department.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Heather.
Thank you so much.
We've had you on once before, right?
It's been a while,
It's
yes.
been a little while.
Yes.
So I saw you the other night at the police banquet, and Pete and I had chatted and thought, maybe Heather, maybe it's time to get her back.
Well, thank you.
Because
for
we never
inviting
know
me
when
back.
those bad things are going to happen.
It's true, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there has to be an advocate for these victims. Can you just tell us in short, what do you do? What is your job? What do you do as an advocate?
Yes, as a victim advocate, the biggest part of my job is helping victims of domestic violence. That's what I get the most calls for, and that's who I help the most. So people have been in abusive relationships, and there's been usually a call to the police and an arrest made, and I help the victim of that crime and their children, if they have children, with protective orders. I help them understand the system, how the jail system works if their offender has gone to jail. I help them through the court system because sometimes it can take a long time. And then I just provide resources. We do have a lot of resources. It's a very difficult thing to get out of an abusive relationship. There are a lot of barriers.
Well, and it's complicated too, because isn't it like a cycle, right? Sometimes they're fine and you're like, oh, this is fine. And then the abuse happens, and then it's the sorry, and then it, you know.
You're absolutely right. You're textbook right. There is a cycle, and the abuse happens, and then there's kind of a honeymoon phase where I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again, and then there's a tension building stage, and then it just starts all over again.
But generally, when abuse happens, it becomes worse and more frequent over time.
We do see that, yes, unfortunately we do, and the police officers are oftentimes called to the same address time after time because it is difficult to get away from abuse.
So you don't help until they ask you for help, right? Or is it on every domestic violence case that you go in and just say, hey, do you need some guidance or help? Or
yeah, that's a good question. If there's a police report, each morning I go through police reports and I look for domestic violence, I look for sexual assault, I look for other cases that I can help with or check in with people on, and I reach out to them, especially when there's been an arrest made, because there's a lot to do right then. And so I reach out to them, I ask, how can I help? Some people say, you know what, I'm fine, everything's fine, but I make sure they have my number and that they know that I'm there when they're ready.
Now, is there a process of, like, if they have to leave, because sometimes it's not safe for them to leave? So do you have any kind of...
Yes, we actually have a flyer that talks about planning to leave, being safe while you stay, and just getting things in order for when it is time to go.
Okay, and then you have resources for when...
Yes, absolutely. We have one shelter in Utah County that helps with housing, emergency shelter if you need it right now. And then they have an amazing housing program. It's called Stability for Survivors, and it's just happened, and so I just can't say enough about it.
So this is a very, very new one?
It's new.
And very needed,
and there's
sure.
not a whole bunch of hoops to jump through and forms to fill out and waiting periods, because if you're getting out of an abusive relationship, you need to go now.
Yes.
And so it really is a great program.
What about those of us who think we could help give something to those places where the women and families go? Who would we reach out to?
So they've just recently changed their name, and it's called the Refuge, and they have an office over in Orem.
Okay.
And you can reach out to them and ask them if there are things you can do or things you can donate or things like that. Yeah.
So we often think that it would be maybe a woman and children. Is that always the case?
It's not always the case. Statistically, it is women are most often the victim of domestic violence, but I have definitely helped some men through when their offender was their girlfriend or their wife, and they have gone to jail, or they have, committed the crime of domestic violence, I've helped male victims as well.
Okay. So if you're looking through the police report in the morning and you call a woman because there was an arrest made and they need to file a protective order, like what are the steps through that? Is it lengthy? Like, is it just take a day and then you're done, or are you kind of following through with this for weeks on end?
There are a few different kinds of protective orders, so it depends on the type of protective orders. If there has been a crime, someone's been arrested, it's actually very quick. It's a 3-page form. We actually go over it on the telephone, and we go through and find out what are the most important things that need protected and fill those out. It's requested from the judge and usually signed within the week. So civil protective orders take a little bit longer. It's a little bit different process, but they can be approved within 3 days.
Okay.
Going through those reports, are you pretty busy?
Yes, I am. Darn it, I don't want to be. There's probably more than you think in our city. There's probably more than you might think. More reports than you might think.
And how long has Spanish Fork, how long has it been since we hired you as the victim's advocate? 4 to 5 years?
You know, I was just thinking that. I think it's been 5 or 6. Yeah, we're coming up on, yeah.
So prior to that, you were the victim's advocate, or you were not, and we did not have one. Remind me.
Prior to that, I did work at the police department in a different capacity. At that time, we shared a victim advocate with South County.
Okay.
So one person was the victim advocate for South County, Spanish Fork, Payson, Salem.
Can you imagine?
That's a lot.
It was a lot for her. And as our population started to grow, that's when Chief Adams at the time approved that we could have our own advocate.
So do you feel like you're right at full time, or does that tend to like go over ever?
I think that we're nearing getting a part-time advocate.
Okay,
to help
that's what I was asking. I was like, how close are we to?
I think we're getting there.
And what about success stories? What?
Oh my goodness. Just today, I met with a victim of domestic violence. I don't want to call her a victim anymore. She's a survivor. She's definitely a survivor. I got a call late one night from the sergeant, and she was ready to go. And we got her a protective order the next day. We reached out to the housing program. They just stepped right in. She had a friend to stay with for a short time until we got her into an apartment with her children. She really it was a long battle. It's been years. She had to wait for a jury trial, and through COVID, there were no jury trials, so this kind of just hung over her head for the longest time. But today when I met with her, she was with her fiance. She's getting married, and she's very happy, and she just can't imagine, being back in that abusive relationship. Wow. So I told her this is why I do my job, for the wedding invitations.
Yes, for something.
But then I'm assuming that she still has to have contact with him, right? If they have children.
Because they have children, yeah. And unfortunately, that's why we were meeting today. There's been some new developments with the children. So we were working on a juvenile protective order, which is a protective order to protect children.
Wow.
So even though she's taken some really great steps, she's still going through
But do you just sense her calming demeanor?
Yes, that you can tell that you're a good person for these people to go to. Now, I do have a question. What about the perpetrator? If he comes out of jail or whatever, then do they ever try and help him get some help, like to deal with?
Yes.
I mean, obviously, he's not dealing with what he's done. He's taking things out on.
Right, absolutely. And I don't say always and very often unless it's true, but in every conviction and sentence, there is some sort of treatment court ordered. Okay. So I will talk with the victim because they know their offender better than anyone. And sometimes there's an underlying issue of substance abuse. So sometimes the treatment, recommended treatment is to go get help with their substance abuse problems. Sometimes it's anger management. Sometimes it's mental health issues. Okay. And so we work together with the prosecutor so the prosecutor can make a recommendation to the judge about what is going to help the perpetrator.
Okay.
Do you have any statistics or ideas, like once this happens, is it inevitable that it's just going to continue, or does that cycle that you talked about, Angela, break?
So the statistic I have always heard since starting this job is that it takes an average of 7 times of abuse before someone actually gets out of it. And so that's what I've always heard, that it does happen over and over, unfortunately.
Well, and it's so complicated too, especially if you've had children with this person.
Right.
Then you want things to work out, and you want to forgive, and you want to move on, or you want to work things out, and so
you want to have hope that when they say it won't happen again, that it really won't happen again.
Yeah, thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Well, the city is lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
There's more studio chatter coming up.